Welcome, friends. I'm Matt Greer. I'm the Artistic Director of Quintessence, a community of singers. And we're here because we're looking forward very much to the concert Quintessence is giving this weekend called Earth Songs. And I am being joined by the composer of one of my favorite pieces that we're doing on the concert this afternoon, Joshua Shank, whose order. Jesus, I'm going to edit this. I'm not very good at this. Hi, friends. This is Matt Greer. I'm Artistic Director of Quintessence, a community of singers, and we're here because we're very much looking forward to a concert that we're doing this weekend called Earth Songs. And joining me today is one of the composers whose pieces is featured on the concert, Joshua Shank, who's joining me for a conversation from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks, Matt. So great to be here.
I'm so pleased you took the time to talk with me about this piece because we're doing a great variety of music on this program, and I have admired your music for a long time. But I discovered this piece when I was programming specifically for this concert a couple of months ago, and I just loved it so much. And we'll talk about the piece in a second, a piece called Primavera and Silencio. But I'm just curious to know a little bit about you musically, where you're from, how you became a musician growing up, and then eventually what led you to composition.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, and I'm so honored to have be on the program, share the program with so many wonderful composers. Dale from Boer is a friend, and I know you have a piece of hers on the program. Yeah. The thing that I always like to sort of tell about my journey to becoming a musician is that I was pretty naive as a kid, and I moved around a ton. And we settled in a town in Minnesota called Faribault when I was right before I was a junior in high school. And I was really like into acoustic guitar and singing singer-songwriter stuff. But then I also really found a space with the theater kids, and so I tried out for the musical Guys and Dolls, which and I got a chorus part. I was Angie the Ox, who was like a gangster, I had one line. But this brilliant choral educator named Chris Harris, shout out to Mr. Harris, was the choir director at the school, but then he was also the sort of the vocal supervisor for that musical. And I brought my guitar to rehearsal one day, and I was singing a song or something like that. And he said, "By the way, Josh, you're going to be in our concert choir next year, and I'm not going to take no for an answer." And I was like, "Okay, I guess I've never sung in the choir before, but you seem nice, you know." And then that my senior year in high school, the only year in high school I was ever in choir, we did just this set of pieces that still are with me to this day. Exultate Justi by Viadana, which is a classic. This would have been in the fall of 1998. So Morton Lauridsen's O Monum was sort of still fresh ink on it, and we sang that piece, and I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was so beautiful. Sarah Hopkins, her Past Life Melodies, which has overtone singing, which was like just the hot piece for a little bit. Victoria's O Magnum Mysterium, which of course is a classic, and then also some Gretchaninov, his Nunc Dimittis, we sang. Just and all these pieces that just lit me on fire for choral music. And so then I went to Luther College in Decorah, Iowa, where at the time Weston Noble, the great Weston Noble, was still there in his storied career as a sort of one of the founding members of certainly of the ACDA, which is the American Choral Directors Association, which is our nationwide choral organization. But he was just a legend in the choral community, and I got to learn from him. And then again, to sort of circle back to this naiveness, I was a music major. I was going to be a music theater major, and looking back on it, I was not good enough to be a music theater major. But as anyone who's done a music major at a college knows, you have to go to there's a recital requirement because you have to sort of intake all of this repertoire. So you go to recitals and things like that. And in the fall of my very first year, so I was 18 years old, went to, just as a requirement, I went to a senior composition recital for this composer whose name is Matthew Erpelding. And I don't know if he's still writing. I have chatted with Matt and told him about his inspiration of me before, but again, this is how naive I was. It had never occurred to me at the time, as I was sitting there in this recital and just getting my mind blown, that like someone my age could write music, could be a composer, because a composer was a dead white German guy, right?
Right.
There was no, or like maybe John Williams, I don't know, who he's white and he's an old guy.
Not quite dead yet.
Yeah, he's still with us, luckily. And so then in the intermission of that recital, I felt a little tap on my shoulder and I turned around and there was Mr. Noble. He had sat down right next to me. And this is such a Weston Noble move. He would just sort of leaned in and said, what do you want to do with your life? And I was just getting my mind blown by this composing thing. And I said, I think I'd like to do this, sir. And he's like, well, then you should do it. And then 2 months later, I like put pen to paper for the first time and haven't looked back. I was a public school choir director for a few years in the Twin Cities, and also taught music theory there before going to grad school. And I got a master's in composition, another master's in musicology, and a doctorate in composition, and have picked up wonderful collaborators, yourself included, along the way. And this piece in particular was a collaboration that was really close to my heart. But I'll let you. I've been sort of
Yeah, no, I really appreciate knowing all that. I mean, because a couple of things resonate with me. One is that I had a great high school choral experience that, looking back on, I mean, you were able to rattle off all of that repertoire that was meaningful to you, and I absolutely can do the same thing. It is, I think it is such a gift for particularly high school choral directors. You just never know what food you are going to be giving to people in the repertoire that you program. And it's absolutely true for me. I am so grateful for the music that I got to sing in high school in particular. And then Weston Noble just saying, what do you want to do? Holy moly. That's, and then giving you somehow permission to say, you should do that. That's just a really formative thing.
By the end of my 4 years at Luther, I was delivering Mr. Noble's dry cleaning for him.
Well, that's an amazing story. So I'm interested. One thing I do want to talk about this piece in particular, but one thing I'm interested in knowing, because composition fascinates me. I'm not one, but in the scope of your career, it has mostly worked out that you work in vocal choral areas. Is that true? And have you branched out or wanted to branch out into instrumental, orchestral, anything like that?
Orchestral music doesn't necessarily thrill me because it's so cloistered or siloed off of everything else. And you get one performance and then that's it. I love writing chamber music. I just went to the Massachusetts premiere of a piece that I wrote back in 2011 by a local new music ensemble. And it's the biggest audience they'd ever had. There were like 100 people in the room, but that's chamber music. I mean, for 100
Right.
people listen to some chamber music, that's pretty cool. So I think I gravitated towards voice for one pretty obvious reason, right? Which is like, that's sort of where I pivoted from. But I also really, really enjoy two other things about choral music. One is that because it uses text, it encourages us to think communally about text together. And what does it mean to us? What does it mean to us as a singular person? And what does it mean to us as a community of listeners and people? But then also, like I said, I have a master's in musicology. I like the research aspect of it as well. I wrote a piece called Color Madrigals a few years ago, which is a set of 6, it's a song cycle, and it only uses texts by John Keats that mention color, the primary and the secondary colors. And so I had to read his collected works, and he wrote one single poem that mentions the word orange. And I had to like dig through all of this in order to find it. And I thought, if I didn't find it, I was going to be in real trouble because I was writing all these color pieces, and then all of a sudden he didn't write. But he did.
And I assume he did not rhyme the word orange, because we all know. Yeah.
It doesn't rhyme.
Well, I'm so glad that you ended up writing for chorus because, as I mentioned, I've admired your music for a long time. And this piece, you know how it is to program a concert when you're just kind of looking for things that are a specific subject matter. And when I found this piece, it just kind of really knocked me out. And as I mentioned, it's one of my favorite pieces that we're doing on this program. There's a lot of great music on this program this weekend. But tell us a little bit about how Primavera and Silencio came to be, because I think the story is kind of fascinating.
Yeah, thanks. So I got this commission from the University of Minnesota in Morris, which is their branch of the University of Minnesota system that is very concerned. This particular campus isn't like an R1 university like the University of Minnesota Twin Cities is. It's more of a liberal arts experience statewide.
Mm-hmm.
And they focus very much on sustainability and environmentalism because this campus is out in the middle of nowhere. It's really nature is all you've got. And so they wanted a piece to take on tour to, I think they're going to Peru. And I thought, oh, sustainability, what am I going to do? And the poet of this work actually hit me to Rachel Carlson's landmark. And oh my gosh, so today we're recording this on September 27th. This is the anniversary today, right? But today is the anniversary of the release of this book, which I happen
Of
to
Silent
hear.
Spring, really?
Yeah, I happen to hear on one of those daily history podcasts that are like 12 minutes long. They're nice to listen to on your walk to work in the morning. How fun. Oh, wow. Anyway, so Rachel Carlson was she essentially started the environmentalist movement in the United States. She worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. And at the time, there was this one pesticide that was a miracle, right? Called DDT. And folks started noticing like animal die-offs, birth defects. And like they would spray, like they would let kids just wander into the cloud of DDT. It was so safe. And so she did this study, and it led to the publication of this landmark book today, as I said, called Silent Spring. And the title is in reference to what if we have a spring and there's no animals? The birds do not sing. There's no sort of chittering of squirrels or anything because they're all dead, right? And I thought, so I should say too that like this study made her a pariah in the scientific community because folks said that she was destroying faith in corporate science. Now we know today, it's silly to even say that. Of course, she was right because there's a monetary aspect to finding what you want. And I mean, she was dragged through the mud. Absolutely, it was published, and 2 years later, she died of cancer, unfortunately, and did not see her work become as a landmark piece of climate science writing. So all of that is like super inspiring, right? And I thought, you know what? I'm going to get this book from the library. I'm going to set this text. It's going to be great. And then I read the book, and I cannot set this text because it's thick scientific prose, like impenetrable, because she's not making an argument so much as showing you the evidence of this terrible thing that's happening. So then I pivoted to asking this poet, Robert Ressler, who's a Spanish speaker. And we talked about this and said, well, if this idea is that the songs of various animals are going to be stolen from us, what if we wrote a song cycle that talked about these various animals that are said to sing? And so that's what each one of these short movements are in this piece. The frog and her little babies, and they're in this. So it starts off with the pájaro, the bird, and then there's the ballena, the whale, the rana, which is the frog, and then finally we pivot back around to humanity. And the texts don't pull any punches, as you can see. If you want to pause the video for a second, if you're watching us, I'm going to pause the video for a second and read, take these in. They're beautiful, but B, they're scary, really.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think one of the things that we have noticed in preparing the piece, Josh, is, as I mentioned to you before we started, we're in New Mexico, so singing something in Spanish is just it's a lovely thing to be able to do here. And the Spanish text is so beautiful, just the sound of it is so beautiful, that it's been important for us in preparing it to remind ourselves continually of the translation of those poems, which are very, very direct and kind of brutal.
Yep, he didn't pull any punches, and then in between each one of these is what I've decided to sort of transitioning from one to the other are these things called espejos, which is a mirror, and just this. They function just as sort of musical transitions from one to the next, sort of like the knee plays in Einstein on the Beach. But I wanted to give them a little extra oomph, and so decided to call them espejos instead, which is mirrors. And that, who has the ability to make an intervention in this climate change process? It's not the frog, it's not the whale, it's not the bird, it's the humano, right? And so we need to do some serious looking in the mirror to come to grips with some pretty troubling things about the way with which we engage in with the natural world.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as I said, finding these pieces were a gift, and I cannot wait to sing them for our audience because I think they'll find them to be tremendously powerful. I'm so glad you alluded to one of the things that has interested me structurally about the piece are these very, very short piano interludes. And that idea of setting a mirror to us that makes a great deal of sense. So I appreciate kind of understanding that a little bit.
It, it should be said that the choir was really excited to premiere this piece. I went up and heard, sorry, they were excited to tour this piece is what I meant to say. I went up and heard the premiere in March of 2020.
Oh my goodness.
And they did not leave for their tour because the world changed, as you know.
Right. Yeah. Well, I hope that at some point these pieces will be able to be heard in the venues in which they were intended to be heard, because I'm sure that would be very powerful for the audiences in Peru. Josh, I just thank you so much for taking a few minutes to talk about this music. The choir has really responded to it, and I just know that our audiences will also. And we look forward to doing more of your music in the future. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Matt. And hello, and to the entire crew at Quintessence, administrators, audience members, singers, with my love. I'm so glad to chat about this piece a little bit with you, and I'm honored that you programmed it.
Thank you. So friends, we hope to see you Sunday at 3 o'clock or Monday at 7 p.m. Both performances at St. John's United Methodist Church in Albuquerque. The Sunday performance will be available by live stream as well. And we hope to see you there.